Eagles Playoff Live Q&A presented by Toyota, proud automotive partner of the NFL. We are live here getting ready for the wild card round against the Green Bay Packers on Sunday at 4:30. Kicking off playoff week here in Philadelphia, Stingers Waterfront, Ridley Park, Ashlyn Sullivan, Dave Zangaro, Reuben Frank, and Barrett Brooks.
Woo!
Oh, nope, can't do that.
Let's go!
But you can do that. You can do
Gotta
whatever you
pace
want
yourself,
down there.
Barrett.
You can do whatever you want down there. We're getting fired up for the playoffs, though, and I gotta say, walking in here, it was so cool to see how many people were here gearing up for this. How many people were on the bus today? Like, you can tell that it's the playoffs in Philly. You feel it here, Dave, for sure.
It's better than last year. I remember last
spirit.
year we did a Q&A, and everyone was just miserable. We're talking about the coach maybe getting fired.
Right.
This is a lot better. You guys remember that?
I remember one guy came up and said, guys, do we have any reason for hope? And David and I are like, no.
This is much different. This is a 14-win team. This is a team that you should feel pretty optimistic about going into the playoffs. Very winnable game in the first round. And then, once you get into the dance, you just got to see what happens. I think this is a team that can go far.
Absolutely. And Barrett, you can tell, especially Monday, Tuesday, it was like, all right, we're getting there. Wednesday, when the team is on the field and they're at the link and the music's playing, I'm like, all right, it's playoff time now.
No question. You know it's playoff time when the players themselves start talking about themselves instead of talking about, everything that they've been through during the season. This is a new season. Everything ramps up that much higher. So every player is going to be ready to rock and roll. Every player is going to want to just, there are kids here. They got to play very, very hard and very, very well, okay? They definitely got to play well.
I love that, Barrett. He's reading the room. He's checking everything out. That's very good on
There you go.
Yep, survey and advanced, always. But especially, I think that we're going to get into so much about this game against the Packers on Sunday. But obviously, the biggest question everyone is asking, and us we're asking today, is definitely about Jalen Hurts. Did he clear concussion protocol today? And it definitely gets a little confusing. It was great to see Jalen Hurts on the practice field today at the link. He was limited at practice, so he didn't technically clear concussion protocol. But everyone we're talking to makes it seem like Jalen Hurts is going to be healthy and ready to go on Sunday.
Yeah, and the way the rule works, he has to practice, and then he'll be seen tomorrow morning by the independent neurologist, league appointed. He's got to come through that with no side effects from today. Mm-hmm. So he couldn't have been cleared until tomorrow. It's really the earliest since he didn't practice last week because he wasn't going to play. So everything points to him playing, and we kind of knew all along that was going to happen. He looks fine. The guy said he was really sharp in practice, and he's a playoff savvy quarterback. He's 26, going into his fourth playoff season, and high expectations for Jalen.
Can I ask you guys this? Maybe one of you three can answer this for me. Now, I know that if he didn't clear concussion protocol, would he have to start all over in the practice? Start all over as far as the whole thing?
No, you stay in whatever phase you're in.
Okay,
you can't go backwards. Well, maybe you could have.
I was always backwards.
But yeah, once you're in like the third phase, then you go to the fourth phase once you clear the third phase. So he's in the final phase where he's allowed to be out of practice and participate. And we would think by tomorrow at practice he'll be a full participant.
Yeah, that's the way everything's trending, and that's the way the team's preparing. They're preparing as if he's going to be the starter. And you look at Green Bay, I think there's actually more question about Jordan Love right now. He has that elbow injury, finally got feeling back in it. He's throwing a little bit, but I think it's reasonable to expect that Jalen is going to be full go this week, and Packers quarterback might not be.
Yeah, and Jordan Love, it was interesting, especially to me, post-game, when they're talking about Jordan Love, how he could have gone back in the game, how it's no big deal that he lost feeling in his hands. I'm listening to that press conference, I'm like, this is a massive deal that he can't feel his throwing hand. What do you mean?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty big part of throwing the football, is being able to feel it. We'll see how he comes through that. I think it's kind of a weird deal. It'll be like a feel thing all week, but it's certainly something to monitor.
Yeah, absolutely. And now let's go out to our reporter on scene here, Ashley Hall. There are a ton of fans here that want to know about this Eagles team. Our fan questions are presented by Dunkin'. America runs on Dunkin'. Ashley, what do you got for us?
All right, guys, I know we're all looking ahead, right? But our friend Jason here does have a question looking back a little bit. Go ahead, Jason.
Do you think Saquon Barkley should have played against Giants?
Let's just go ahead and get this over with, shall we? Barrett, I'll go to you first on that.
I just feel as though Saquon is doing what's best for the team. And that's the biggest thing. He understood that in order for him to play, it's not just him. He needed that offensive line out there. He would need the receivers out there because if he didn't have those 2 receivers out there, 2 starters, and the tight end and the offensive line, then the likelihood of him that was the Giants, wasn't it? He'd probably still got it. But, I mean, you risk those guys getting hurt, and it's not just him getting hurt, but everybody else getting hurt. So he was just being smart and understanding that the ultimate goal is to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it was absolutely the right decision. And it's like, even if you don't win the Super Bowl, I've heard a lot of like, it's now Super Bowl or bust. If they don't win the Super Bowl, it was a bad decision. I don't think that's true. I think if it increases your odds 5% to win the whole thing, you owe it to the team to do that. And I think it's tempting to go for a record like that. I think Saquon, like selfishly, a part of him wanted to do it, but you have to do what's best for the team. And if it helps you even incrementally get to the ultimate goal, you have to do that.
And, my thing about it is, there's been 6 games this year. He needed 101 yards to break Dickerson's record. There's only been 6 games where he had 101 yards before the fourth quarter. His first halves have been good, but not great. So now you're looking at, like, on the average, he got to 101 yards, like, on his 17th carry. So now you're looking at, man, he's out there in the fourth quarter on a cold day, 7 days before a playoff game, with the entire O-line, like Barrett just said. Is that really ideal? It's not like you just, even with the Giants, I mean, they know if they want to get the record, they're going to stack the box. Now, you're in a situation where, maybe he's like 19 for 81 in the middle of the fourth quarter, and you're like trying to get a couple yards here and there. It's just, when you chase records, bad things happen. And I think it was absolutely the right call. Yeah. I would have loved to see him get it.
Of course, and I appreciated the Eagles' honesty about it because we did talk to them a lot about it last Wednesday when we had the chance to talk to Saquon and the players, and I appreciate that Saquon Barkley did come across bummed. Like, it was clear he wanted to get the record, but really I thought what put into perspective for me was when you talk to the offensive line, and while they were bummed, they're like, we really need this break. And Barrett, I know you can speak to better than anyone, to have this Eagles team go into this game healthy, it's such an advantage over the Packers.
It definitely is. And plus this is a different time than when I played. When I played, if I had the bus, Jerome Bettis, and he needed 101 yards, it'd have been a whole different thing because there's nothing that could stop him from getting on that field, whether he had to start an offensive line or not. He'd have went out there and played, and then everybody else would have had to play. So it's a different time. These guys take care of themselves better than we did back then, as you can see.
What are you saying?
But I mean, it's just, they have the ultimate goal of going and winning a Super Bowl. And when you have that type of perspective, and I already told, what did I say the first week? What did I say the first week?
He called
here we go. Barrett patting himself on the back again.
I said if Saquon Barkley, before he even touched the rock, if Saquon Barkley wins the rushing title, he won the rushing title, the Eagles not get to the Super Bowl, I said they win the Super Bowl.
He did say that.
I'm with it.
He said that week 1 of the regular season. I looked and I'm like, you're nuts. You're nuts, but I'm with you. Now you're not so nuts.
Let's talk about all the predictions he doesn't nail.
We're not talking about them, Dave. Okay?
And, there's still the overall single season rushing record. I think Terrell Davis has it like 2,512 or something. Mm-hmm. So regular season plus postseason. So who knows? They make a deep run. He's got 4 opportunities. Maybe he goes
still
for
in
that.
play, and you can get a Super Bowl and a record. Keep everyone happy. That's
but
for sure.
Back to the point about the health of this team. It's something we shouldn't gloss over. They're going to have 22 of 22 starters in this game. And a couple years ago, when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, it was such a big topic that they go into that game with all 22 starters. It's really rare. Maybe not that rare because they're doing it again, but it's such a big advantage. You look at Detroit right now, and even though they're still playing really well, in the back of my mind, I'm wondering if those injuries don't catch up with them in the playoffs at some point. And that's not to say the Eagles won't get someone hurt this week or next week, but to enter the playoffs with all your starters healthy is such a big deal.
Right, and I know, Dave, we were just talking about it. It's been rare this season, especially on offense, where you've had all 11 starters fully healthy. Dallas Goedert coming back to practice and being able to play. Like, this is huge, especially on offense, because it has been a bit of a rarity that they've had all 11 on the field.
Yeah, and if you think that the passing offense has underachieved this year, I think that's fair. But I know Ruby pointed this out a lot. They've really only had 3 games with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. So if you're looking
3 games?
3 full games. Dallas Goedert got hurt really early in one of them, so in the 4th game. So like if you're trying to find a reason why maybe this passing offense is going to click all of a sudden in the playoffs, I think that's a really big deal because Jalen's not really throwing to those other guys. Jahan Dotson's kind of just getting aerobic work out there with him. So like if you have all 3 of those guys on the field, I think it really does change the dynamic of the offense.
Right.
Agreed, and now let's go back out to Ashley, who's standing by with another fan question presented by Duncan.
While we're talking health and we're talking a little thing called the Super Bowl. Oh, he's going to wait 1 second. Thank you for that. Our friend Emily here wants to know if a certain someone might be back for said Super Bowl. Take it away, Em.
So my question is, if we do get to the Super Bowl, do we think Brandon Graham is going to be back for another game?
Good question.
Good question. She's been paying attention to the
I think that's a
timetable.
reach. I mean, I know he'd love to do it, but that's a pretty serious injury, and I'd be really shocked if he's able to come back and play.
I'm not counting him out, though. I mean, we've seen him do some things that we never thought he'd be able to do. And look, if this really is his last year, and that's the final chance he has to play, he might not care. I think you're right, Rube. I think it is probably a reach. I think it's unlikely, but I don't think it's a 0% chance.
Yeah, it's not like he went through all the strenuous stuff that T.O. did. T.O. was sleeping in hyperbaric chambers. We're not seeing Brandon Graham sleeping in hyperbaric chambers and all that type of stuff. You know, he's working to try to get back, but realistically, that's a really tough because you do so much with your arms. You're hitting, you're separating, you're getting off tackle, you're tackling. That's really tough on your tricep when you're doing stuff like that.
Especially with a player like him. He's not just like a speed edge rusher. You can just say the get off is there, get around the edge and try to get the quarterback. He's using his power, play in and play out. That's a good point, Barrett.
Right.
And they do really miss him a lot.
They do.
They do miss him, especially in the snap counts. But knowing Brandon Graham, I just think with his mindset, he wouldn't want to go into that unless he knows he's 110% because he wouldn't want it to hinder the snap count of someone else or worst case worse, make a mistake on the field in the magnitude of a Super Bowl. Like he's not going out there unless he's 110%, which he's not going to be.
But you got to look at Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio would take an 80% Brandon
yeah,
Graham.
That's true. That's a good point. All right, let's go back out with another fan question. There are so many here. Our fan questions tonight presented by Duncan. America runs on Duncan. Ashley, back out to you.
Yeah, the fan questions are rolling in. Quick thing though, Joe just wants you guys to know that Dave and Rube are his favorite, first and foremost.
Thank you.
He watches all the time, listens all the time. But he does have a question about our friends over at the Chiefs.
I was wondering why, when they're 10-1, Andy was like, no problem, everything's going to be good. But when the Eagles were 10-1 last year, we all kind of felt it. And what was the difference? Why did the Eagles feel like they were going to lose, but the Chiefs still feel like they're up there?
Great question.
Yeah, it is a good question. I think it probably starts with the amount of success they've had consistently for so long with the head coach, with the quarterback. Not to say that the Eagles didn't have that the year before, but I also think the Eagles had a bunch of pressure on them in 2023 that kind of led to that collapse. And we saw the cracks in the foundation. It was like they're winning these games, but they're not playing to their standard, and they're upset about it. Whereas the Chiefs, I think they kind of embraced all the wacky ways they were winning this year with the feeling that if they get to the playoffs, they're going to be able to turn it on. And we'll see if that's the case. I don't know if that's the case. They kind of feel inevitable to me just because they have the quarterback and the coach, and that defense is really good. But I think to me that's the difference.
Talking about maybe the best quarterback ever by the time all is said and done, and definitely one of the top 5 coaches ever. So that's a tough combination.
Yeah, and defensively, they are so good defensively.
You're a big Spags fan.
Yeah. Spags, he's great defense, the way they're playing. And during that time, I think it was a lot of the offensive players that were getting hurt as opposed to defensive players. That defense kind of stayed intact. I think a linebacker left a little, missed a little bit of time. But other than that, the offensive guys were the ones that were getting hurt, and that defense stayed intact, and they played the way they played because of that defense.
Yeah, I don't want to make this a Chiefs Q&A, but it is kind of, I see some similarities in the way the Patriots kind of went through their dynasty, where they had to form shift a little bit from being a defensive team to an offensive team. This is kind of like the opposite of that in a way with the Chiefs. Like they were so great on offense, and now it's kind of shifted, and Spags' defense is carrying them. And that's what really good teams that have sustained success over a long period of time are able to do. They're able to kind of shape shift a little bit and be whatever they need to be.
Yeah, and plus, you got to understand, we had the oldest team, the oldest defense last year. But look how they just changed the script. We have the youngest team, the youngest defense, and now the #1 defense in the league right now. So they went from being the slowest defense to the fastest defense and over an off season. So I got to take my hat off to Howie and Vic Fangio for doing that.
Oh, it's such a difference in a year, and to the point where we didn't think it could shift this quickly.
You guys don't miss Justin Evans?
No, not a lot. Maybe only a teeny bit. James Bradbury, miss him?
Still around.
Still around, still kicking. But I think especially with this defense, and you look at Vic Fangio and the job he's done, I appreciate it because you can tell no one wants to talk about it, and I don't blame him because we asked them so much in training camp, the problems with last year's team and how is this team different. Jordan Mailata talked about that in the locker room today because he felt like he needed to going into the playoffs. It's like this is a night and day difference going into that wild card game against the Bucs, or now you see this game against the Packers. And he just said it's different because we're talking about it. He said the leaders on this team talked about it in a meeting today where they're not going to allow the same mistakes to happen that happened last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a totally different vibe. It couldn't be any more different. Like we joked about it earlier, but the vibe going into last year's playoffs was like you knew they were going to lose. Yeah. There was no chance they were going to win that game.
Hence the Q&A. Not
yeah,
a lot of
I mean,
people
I really did feel bad for the people that showed up last year. I feel a lot better for all the people here. I mean, last year was that bad, and
I felt bad for us.
It's just a complete 180 this year. This team, you should be confident. I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl, but they're right there in the mix. They're that good.
Yeah, and a better team.
And I'm always my glass is always half full. I couldn't even have it half full. I mean, it was barely on E. It was way down here last year going into the playoffs. But now it's just a totally different team now. Totally different team.
It really is. Different vibes in the locker room, that's for sure. As we go back out to Ashley, who's standing by with a virtual question, I'm told.
Yep, first virtual question. Focus back in on this game coming up, guys. Rich S. wants to know, how will the Eagles handle the Green Bay rushing game?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, that's really where their offense starts.
Yeah.
Josh Jacobs is kind of like forgotten about because we've had all these great running back seasons, but he's one of the few backs in the league that can really do it between the tackles. He can do it on those stretch runs. He can do it through the air. He's a good receiver. And basically everything they do in the passing game gets set up because of how good he is. It's a big test. A lot of his runs this year, a lot of his success has come between the tackles. So you're talking about Jordan Davis, Milton Williams, Jalen Carter, at the first level, and then Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean filling their gaps at the second level. It's a big deal for them in this game.
And tackling is going to be huge because early in the season, I think the first time they played the Packers, they did not tackle well. Mm-hmm. And I think Green Bay had 167 rushing yards in that game. Kept them in the game, so they're going to have to tackle better, and they have been, for the most part, a really good tackling team since the bye week. That's going to be huge.
Yeah, I'm a trench guy, so everything's in the trenches, so I need big games out of Williams, Davis, and Carter. Mm-hmm. But when you look at it, this defensive line have done what they've done, and the reason why you know that, not necessarily the stats those guys have up front, but when you look at our linebackers, the linebackers are there to make tackles, and each one of our linebackers, they have over 120 tackles each?
Yep.
So when your two linebackers have over 120 tackles, that means that they're doing their job up front. So it's going to be well in the trenches, and if they do well, this team will do well.
It really is interesting when you go back to week 1 against the Packers. One, it feels like a year ago that
right.
game was played, and it's hard to compare because of all the factors, the turf, playing in a different country, but we were talking to Kobe Dean in the locker room today about can you even watch the film and learn anything from it? And he said, yeah, I wanted to throw up, which how poor the defense played in that game. And while they did play poor, it wasn't, I think, to the magnitude he's saying, but that just goes to show the standard they have, especially with the linebackers right now. He was talking about at that point, he really didn't even know what he had with Zach Bond. I mean, look at them now, the difference in not even a year.
He wasn't even a starter going. Remember, he wasn't even a starter going into the year. They had White there, and I thought he was going to be the guy opposite of Bond.
So did he.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, in like 24 hours, he became a no-show, and then Kobe Dean just showed up from that point on.
Yeah, that was kind of our introduction to Zach Bond, though. If you think, most of the tape wasn't great in that game, but Zach Bond flashed in that one, and that was the first time we thought, okay, maybe he'll be an average linebacker.
Right.
They got something here.
Better than what we've seen.
Yeah, and then he ends up being an all-pro level player, but there were glimpses of that in week 1, and then he just did it for 16 weeks after that.
How about Eric Wilson, the guy that was here, is on this Packer team, the guy that started doing yoga and all that stuff and stopped eating. He was a vegetarian for a while, and all of a sudden,
he's not playing bad either, by the way.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, who's this guy now?
They have some good linebackers.
My guy, Cooper.
Adrian Cooper's pretty good.
Cooper's really good.
Quay Walker's played well for them this year.
He's just got healed up, so we're gonna have our, this is gonna be a fight with those guys.
It's gonna be a challenge, that's for sure. Sunday, 4:30 at the Link against the Packers. As we go back out to Ashley, who's standing by with another fan question presented by Duncan.
All right, gang. As we know, Eagles fans are everywhere. But Doris, where are you from?
Chestnut Hill area.
I love it. She was like, I'm from Philly. I was like, I love it. I love it. All right, Doris, what's your question?
My question is, are you confident that Jalen Hurts will return right away and play in the Super Bowl?
And this game too, guys. Let's start here.
And the Super Bowl. Let's just go big picture. Yes, he's fully healthy. I think he's going to play.
Jalen's played a lot of football. He's played a lot of postseason football. He's actually, I was looking this up today, if you look up quarterbacks 26 and younger, he's like in the top 5 as far as games and attempts. He's played a lot of big games, Super Bowl. I think a couple weeks off might not be ideal, but I don't think he'll have any trouble getting into a rhythm and getting into becoming the player he was since the bye, which is one of the best QBs in the league. I'm not concerned about it.
Yeah, the last time we saw Jalen, really saw him, he got hurt so early in that Commanders game, was the Steelers game, and it was one of his best games of the year. 290 yards, a couple touchdowns, him and A.J. Brown dancing together after that one. But that came all on the heels of like the biggest question of the season after that Panthers game, like what's going to happen with this passing offense. I kind of wish we would have seen it for another week or two after that because it was such a limited sample size, but we know it's in there with him and with this passing offense. I think ideally you'd see it against Commanders, maybe one more week. But I think the fact that the last time we really saw him play, it did look so good, probably makes them feel pretty good in that locker room.
Since the bye week, he's got the second highest passer rating. So they played 13 games after the bye. The second highest passer rating in Eagles history over a 13-game span, behind Nick Foles in 13. But he was playing as well as he's ever played over a few months. So I have total confidence in him to keep that going.
Yeah, we're talking about Jalen Hurts has played a lot with those guys out there, and this is a run-dominant team, but this might be one of the first times I'll say, I wouldn't mind going out there passing. We got to make sure we don't mess around with Xavier. Xavier McKinney's, one of the better safeties in the league. He leads the NFL right now in interceptions. But other than that, the guys out there are just, not good at all. These are backups to backups that are out there. So, it might be a great day to go out there and pass and hose it around with the secondary that they have.
Yeah, no Jair Alexander. He's their best corner.
Surgery,
so
that's huge.
It's a big deal. And they run a lot of zones, so it's not like Jair is going to be man against A.J. Brown, but there will be opportunities if you get like an Eric Stokes on A.J. Brown. I'll take A.J. 100 out of 100 times in that.
Sounds like a good opportunity there. Let's go back out to Ashley.
We are back. Hello, everybody. All right, we're going to hit up Wade Workman first on virtual. He wants to know, do you think the defense will be blitzing early in this game?
That's a good question. So if you think back to week 1, it was actually one of the highest blitz rates for the Eagles all year, over, I think, like 32.4% in that game.
You have a 100th on that?
Just state things.
Don't make fun of me for that. But significantly higher than most of the games this year, and I'm not exactly sure why that is. I think some of it was game plan. I also think it was Vic Fangio not really knowing what he had in his secondary back then.
Right.
So not knowing what you have in your secondary, not knowing what you have up front, feeling the need to blitz. I don't know if he'll feel that need, because even though the Eagles haven't gotten a ton of pressure this year from their front, the back end holds up so well that you get those secondary sacks. You get players running to the football. In this game, it is something to watch, though. Jordan Love does not get sacked very much, and if you can't get pressure on him and you allow him to get those second chances, eventually he is going to make a play on you.
He's only been sacked 14.000 times this year.
And you got to look at it. You're talking about a guy that, he's good at times, but he's also been very bad at times. And that was earlier on. He's threw a lot of interceptions. But when you look at Vic Fangio and what he has there, So these guys up front, once again, the guys up front got to press the pocket. On the outside, I think we're okay. Nolan Smith turned the corner halfway through the season, and then you got to look from the other side. In the interior, if they can press the pocket, get somebody in his face, and like I said, he hurt his hand from pressure going in front of him from the middle of the field. Maybe then he thinks, all right, I hurt my elbow last time I did that. If we can get in his face, maybe he'll hesitate for a second and give us an opportunity to get to him.
I will say this. Reuben and I talked about it earlier in the week. One of my concerns, and there aren't a ton of concerns, one of them in this game and in the playoffs for the Eagles is, can they get enough pressure? Point blank, can they get enough pressure? It's not the strength of this defense, which is kind of weird when you're talking about an Eagles defense. That's kind of the way they've built it in recent years, but that's not the case this year. This year, the strength is the secondary. Do they have enough up front? It's got to be a group rush with Nolan Smith, you mentioned, Josh Sweat, 8 sacks this year, leads the team. Jalen Carter's been great. Milton Williams has been really good, but they don't have like the Hassan Reddick type from 2 years ago that's going to get you 15 sacks. He was an absolute wrecking ball in the playoffs in 22 before the Super Bowl. They don't have that guy, so it's going to take a group effort. It's going to take them working together, running some games and twists up front, at doing those little extra things to get to the quarterback. I think it's in the back of my mind that if there is a reason for them to struggle at some point in the playoffs, I think that could be one of them.
Right, and I agree. And now let's go back out to Ashley, and she's standing by with another fan question presented by Duncan.
Yeah, guys, we're back to QB1, obviously what everyone is talking about today, but Larry wants to get a little more insight from Barrett on what he thinks about what has gone down in the past few weeks with the concussion protocol and everything else. Larry, what do you got?
Barrett, I wanted to know from behind the scenes, this protocol, like, are you telling me that he hasn't thrown the ball in 20 days? Today's his first day throwing the ball. He had to have been practicing a little bit. And I wanted to know about your personal history with concussions.
When you're under the concussion protocol, you cannot talk to the coaches when you're inside the building. So he hasn't thrown to his receivers. Of course, he might have done some, throwing on his own, but he can't talk to the guys, that are there. He's got to make sure he just, talks to the players and not the coaches. So he hasn't really had these timing things or, out with those guys. But my, concussions, I had a lot. I had 6 that were diagnosed, but I probably went through a bunch of times being out there. You asked me how many fingers I got up, I say, yeah, you got up fingers, So it's ice and ibuprofen get you back out there. So it's totally different now. The NFL tries to make sure they protect the players a lot better than when they protected when I was playing there, but it's become a major concern. It's a major concern. That's why these guys are always on me about that. Hey, get that CTE right. We got a show to do. See that guy right there? That's him right there. He tells me something wrong. Hey, CTE, hey man, you need me to get your medicine for you? Right there. He tells me all the time. Thank you.
I think as a whole, and it's worth the question because I think as a whole, the concussion protocol in the NFL has changed so much to the point I'm getting asked a lot this week, okay, well, Jalen Hurts has to be out 4 to 6 weeks, right? I'm like, no, it's not like that anymore. There is no timetable. It's so based on the player when he's comfortable coming back. But I understand why it's so confusing because the NFL has done a great job protecting players, but there are a lot of steps in place now that I think a lot of fans are like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah, there are phases to the concussion protocol, and I think that honestly teams are not exactly forthright about where a player is in that progression, and I think that's why you get a little confused by the times, and sometimes we're left in the dark too about that, but yeah, I'm sure aerobically he's been working out, and that those are like part of the steps of the phases. Like in one phase you can be a limited participant in practice. Before that you can do aerobic exercise with just the trainers. Before that it's like you can be in the film room. You can so everything is kind of laid out by the CBA and by that protocol. And then of course the last step is independent neurologist clears you, which is a good thing that it's independent because in Barrett's day it wasn't, and you had guys kind of fudging it to get players back on the field, and you don't want that.
And if you're anyone who's interested in it, you can just Google the phases and the details of what it takes to get through each phase. That's all public info. It's all out there, so it's a good thing to look at.
Definitely, especially this week. And Ash, you got another question I hear.
Yes, we do. Nate has a question about his favorite player.
So CJ Gardner-Johnson has been on the team for like 2 years. He spent 2 seasons with the Eagles, and it's been 2 winning seasons. How much of a impact does his passionate play style have on the team?
He's just the lightning rod. He's the guy to keep those guys. I used to think that BG talked a lot. Nobody talks as much as CJ Gardner-Johnson. GJ never stops talking. So he's like the guy that gets them sparked up. Plus he plays at a high level also.
The guy's played 28 games in an Eagles uniform and has 12 interceptions. I mean, he's really a peerless playmaker. He's played really physical this year, a lot of big hits. You're going to get those you're going to get those unsportsmanlike. It comes with the territory, but he's such a productive player, always around the ball, and a playmaker. If there's a ball up for grabs and there's 3 guys trying to get it, he's going to come out with that football because that's just the way he's wired. Can't let him go after 1 year again.
Yeah, no, and I think when you talk about CJ Gardner-Johnson, there's really 2 ways to talk about him. One is what Barrett's talking about, like the trash talk. I think he means something to the spirit of that defense with the way
Toughness.
he conducts himself, the toughness. And it was something that honestly was missing last year.
Yeah, it was.
You know, you think back to that 49ers game, no one's walking through their DB warm-ups that CJ Gardner-Johnson's there.
Right.
That doesn't happen. So I think that part of it has brought something to the team, but also, like Rube said, the playmaking is there. And that doesn't mean he's not going to give up a play. We've seen that too, and I think you have to live with those moments. Honestly, he's still kind of relatively young as a safety. He came in the league as a nickel corner, and he's still kind of learning the safety. He won't want me to say that, but he's still kind of learning the safety position, so you got to put up with some of the bad plays. And early in the season, honestly, there weren't enough splash plays, but gosh, over the last couple months, they've been there. And when the splash plays are there, he's a really good player.
Yeah, he has definitely made up for the first half, a little slow at first, but to the point where he's taken Quinyon Mitchell's interceptions I was talking about in the locker room. He's like, if the ball's in the air, I'm taking it. I don't really care if Quinyon Mitchell has his hands on it too, because it's my interception. But I've been encouraged with CJGJ. I think we've all seen a step. It was a couple games ago in the post-game locker room when he said, frankly, I need to grow up. It was after that penalty, the huge penalty that took him out of the game. And just that self-awareness, I had never seen that from him. I think we're seeing steps where I'm encouraged to see what CJGJ is in maybe 2 seasons at this point.
I think you just have to harness that with him. You can't get thrown out of games. And I know if he just said something, everyone's like, he shouldn't get thrown out of the game for that. But if you have one foul and you know the second one's going to kick you out, zip it up.
Yes, it's a learning process, that's for sure. Ashley, you got another question we hear.
Yeah, we only like one Dallas here, and I think we all know who that is. So Mary wants to ask a question about the big fella.
Good evening, everybody. A huge Eagles fan here. And so, given Dallas Goedert's performance against the Giants on Sunday, he came back, one of the starters, so come back from the injury, and he looked pretty good. So what are your thoughts with respect to the impact he'll have and the benefits the Eagles will have because he'll be in the game on Sunday?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. It's just huge having him. Obviously, Jalen doesn't trust a lot of receivers. There's 3 guys that he likes to throw to, and when you're missing one of them, you're not going to be in peak efficiency offensively. I'm a huge Dallas Goedert fan. The injuries are really the only thing that's held him back from being a top 5 tight end in the league. Only played, or he missed 7 games this year.
Yep.
Only played 9 or 10, I guess, with the last one. So he means so much to this offense. It's just tough when it's just Devontae and AJ. As good as they are, you need that third guy, and Dallas is a big playmaker.
And Barrett will like this. I think he really means something to their run game.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Because like Grant Calcaterra has done a really nice job backing up Dallas Goedert, just catching the football. But man, they miss Dallas Goedert being an inline blocker for that run game. He's a weapon, and there aren't many tight ends who can really do that, be that dual threat kind of player. Dallas Goedert's one of them. And as much as Grant Calcaterra tries in there, he's a little light to do it, and he gets knocked back sometimes. So having Dallas
trying
Goedert
to be nice
at the point, but Goddard's kind of rare in that he's so good. Like at the point of attack, he's so strong. So as great as he's been catching the ball, 3rd highest yards per game in his career this year, by the way, he also means a ton to them up front.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the quarterback and the tight end, that's a quarterback's best friend is the tight end. So if you can control the interior of the defense in between those seams, you can do that with Dallas Goedert, it really opens up on the outside because you got to pick your poison in. Yes, you could double team AJ all day, but then you have, Devontae on one side, and then you got this guy in the middle of the field just outrunning. He's faster than most linebackers, but then also he's bigger than most DBs that try to cover him. So it's the decided advantage with using him in the passing game in the middle of that defense.
Agreed, and we are halfway through our live Q&A, and it's time now for our RAV4 Things to Know, presented by your local Tri-State Toyota dealers, presented by Toyota, proud partner of the NFL. So we each are going to give our 4 points to this game. We each have 1 point about the Green Bay Packers and how we think the Eagles should handle this game. Barrett, I'm going to go to you first. What's the biggest point here on Sunday?
Stop the run. If you stop the run, make them one-dimensional, it really puts their offense in a bind. Now you have to throw from the pocket. So, I want to keep them one-dimensional, and that way we can really heat up on Love.
I like it. Rue, what do you got?
Well, along those lines, this is kind of a crazy stat, but the 2024 Packers are the only team in NFL history that goes back to 1920, to average 4 yards a carry in every game they played. Their consistency running the ball is scary, and they just don't have bad games. They also had at least 82 yards in every game rushing. So you're looking at a really consistent powerhouse running game, and the Eagles, since BG went out, have been a little leaky against the run. So that's certainly maybe the biggest matchup in this game.
What do you think, Dave?
For me, it's takeaways, and the Packers have been such an opportunistic defense. 31 takeaways this year. Xavier McKinney, one of the league leaders in interceptions. He really ranges back there as a free safety. He got Jalen Hurts in week 1.
Yep.
Jair Alexander also got him in week 1. He's not playing in this game, but the Eagles have been so good about protecting the football. The Packers have been so good at taking it away. Something's got to give this week, and that could really determine who wins this game.
That is interesting, and to me, it's the starts for me. And we know that the Eagles definitely have struggled with slow starts this season, but the Packers have not. They are 4th in the league with the amount of first quarter points that they have. But interesting enough, the past 2 weeks, the Packers have not looked like the Packers, and I knew that. But after talking to a couple reporters in Green Bay, there are struggles in Green Bay right now. They are limping towards this game. They do not feel confident going into this game, to the point where there's this major drama going on with Coach LaFleur right now, and the clock management issues, and there's injuries. And they basically said that while they depended on the Packers to have these fast starts all season, the past 2 weeks they haven't. And they basically said that Jordan Love just hasn't come to par the past 2 weeks. So it was interesting. I knew things were shaky in Green Bay, but I didn't realize how bad it was the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, now they're without Christian Watson, which really kind of changes the dynamic of that offense. They've been so good at explosive plays. This year they have he has 5 catches of 40-plus yards. He's their deep threat guy, and without him, if you can keep them in front of you, it's going to be a lot of Jaden Reed, a lot of Tucker Kraft over the middle. Without that element of a deep ball, I think this Eagles defense can really kind of just surround them and thwart that offense.
All right, Ash. Go ahead, Reuben.
I was just going to say, you mentioned the 2 interceptions that Jalen threw against the Packers in week 1. He only has 3 since then.
Yeah, crazy.
Which is amazing. So 40% of his interceptions came on the opening day. Almost as many in South America as North America.
Good stat there, Reuben. All right, Ash, what do you got?
We have another virtual question from our pal David Kaufman, and he wants to know, how confident are you guys with Jake Elliott heading into the playoffs?
We need a kicker question will be coming.
Yeah, no, I think it's a reason for concern, honestly. And he's made every kick in his postseason career, so maybe he'll just snap out of it. But
snap out of it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that if they're in a situation, it could change Nick Sirianni's decision making. Honestly,
yeah.
Like if they have a 4th and 4, if they have a 4th and 4 versus like a 54-yard field goal. And maybe it'll be a good thing ultimately, but I think Nick Sirianni would be more likely to go for it in a situation if he can't trust the kicker. And honestly, I think Jake has earned the right to still be the kicker, but I wouldn't give him every opportunity in the playoffs.
Yeah, you're not going to find someone better right now. At the end of the year, there's nobody available. But I mean, he's 16 for 16 in his postseason career. And anyone who watched the Super Bowl in 17, I mean, those 2 fourth-quarter field goals were so clutch. 42 and 46 in a Super Bowl, at a close game. They don't win that game without him. So I think he does deserve the benefit of the doubt. But I didn't see this coming. He's been so good, so consistent, such a great deep ball kicker. Had one of the highest averages from 50 and out in his career. He was at 71% coming into the year, and he's 1 for 7. So I didn't have Jake Elliott struggling on my bingo card, and it is a concern for me.
Yeah, you got to think, Barrett, to me, with Coach Sirianni, if he has any other excuse to be more aggressive and go for it on 4th downs, I think he's going to take it. But I also see Coach Sirianni, he's so believing in his players, and he's so adamant that he wants to give his guys chances as much as he can, where I see both sides of this, where he's like, no, get him out there. I believe in him, and I want to show everyone that I believe in him. I could see him doing that, too.
You know, that's Nick to a fault. You know, Nick definitely depends on his guys to go out and make plays for him.
Yep.
In the first 4 games, it didn't work out for him, but you know, it wasn't working out for him on a consistent click. But now it's back to that consistent click. So I think he'll still have a lot of faith in him, Jake Elliott, to go out there and kick. And from that aspect, it's going to be, status quo. He's going to give it to him. But, if he has to be more aggressive in his play calling, he'll definitely do it.
I think they should bring Jason Peters back just to stand next to Jake.
Right, there you go.
On the sideline, no more misses.
Giants game, 2nd game of the season.
We'll see.
Was a 63-yarder, 62 or 63? 62, and it started that playoff run at 17.
There you go. All right,
Second
Ash.
game of his career.
Yeah,
second game.
Impressive stuff. Let's go back to an in-person question presented by Dunkin' America. Runs on Dunkin'. Ash, what do you got?
Dan, meet everybody. Everybody, meet Dan.
Dan.
Season ticket holder, huge pre- and post-game live fan.
Thank you.
And he's got a question for y'all.
Yes, if Jalen Hurts does play this Sunday, coming out of a concussion protocol, do you think that Green Bay will still see him as a running threat and shadow him throughout the game?
Yeah, I think they will because he means so much to their run game. The +1, the numbers really change everything. And Saquon Barkley's talked about that. We all talk about the offensive line and how much that's meant to his success this year, but I think Jalen's been a really big part of it too. And you have like Kenny Pickett in there. It's not the same threat. Even he has some wheels, but he doesn't have the Jalen wheels. I wouldn't be surprised to see them keep some of the read option stuff in the playbook this week and maybe run it early just to put that doubt in the back of the defense's mind. I think that's a real possibility early in this game. And if he's cleared the concussion protocol, anyone can get hurt. You don't worry about that.
And I just wrote a story just before he got hurt on how fast he looked. I mean, he had a long run in each of his last 3 games, 20 yards or more, which we never saw that late in the season. We never saw fast Jalen. He was always banged up. And I think, now he's rested and he's, his legs are healed, and I think he's going to have a big game running.
Yeah, absolutely. Just his effect, the Jalen effect has it, so you can't crash that in. You saw in the Commanders game, after he went out, they started crashing that in. Well, you crash that in now, he can take it out the backside and he'll take it for 20. So, it's almost like pick your poison. You want Saquon to take it for 80, or do you want Jalen to take it for 20? And defenses think about that all the time when it comes to his running ability.
Right, and I know going into the playoffs, I figured this when we went into the locker room today, that this was going to be the message that it's one game at a time. I knew it was coming from Jordan Mailata, and we definitely got that you stick to the status quo. It's one game at a time. But Nakobe Dean had a money quote today that he was on Instagram, and of course he has all these friends around the league. He's like, I saw a lot of South Beach, I saw a lot of Miami, and I saw us in a padded practice in the cold at the link working. I was like, that's so cool that he said that, because it is true when you think about the playoffs and the intensity. But I understand why the Eagles and the players, especially Barrett, aren't going to say it's any different than any other game. You can't make this bigger than it is, even though it is clearly bigger than it is. And I think that's a unique balance to find.
Yeah, they're not going to think it. They're going to approach it the same way. And that's just because NFL players are creatures of habits. They do things every single week the same exact way. They're going to put their pants on the same exact way. So, that's going to stay the same. But they also understand each step you go into the playoffs, it gets faster and faster, more physical up front, and your decision-making and the talent you're playing against gets better at each step in the playoffs. So they'll be ready to play.
I talked to a couple guys today that said they're going to actually change the way they put on their pants.
They're going to put zippers on them or something?
Joke's on you. All right, Ash, let's go back out to you. Got another question presented by Duncan.
All right, guys, so they asked me what my job is. I said, I can't answer that question easily. They're like, well, then how can I get a cup? I'm like, you got to ask a question. So we made it here with Patty. They were having a little bit of an argument, so I want to settle it here and now. So, Patty, what's your question?
Who is the starting tight end, Calcaterra or Goedert?
There's no question, Goedert's the guy.
We're arguing about this?
He's so good of a player, run blocking, receptions. I mean, I don't think any tight end has a better one-handed catch than Goedert. He's always snatching one-handed catches out of the air. So I believe that, it's going to be Goedert for sure.
Calcaterra had a nice one-hander.
He really did.
Yeah, he did.
Down the sideline.
Yep.
I like Calcaterra. He doesn't have the dual threat ability that Goedert has. We were talking about earlier. I think Calcaterra could maybe grow in to be a tight end 1 in the league, but you disagree with me.
I think he's too much of a liability. You need something at the point of attack.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, I mean, what does Zach Ertz give you at the point of attack?
Gave you 118 catches, which Grant Calcaterra will never do.
Okay, I mean, maybe.
Give
but
Grant a chance.
I think he has some upside as a tight end 1. I don't think he has the dual threat upside that Dallas Goedert has.
I think the bigger question is going to be, are you ready, Barrett?
What's that?
Who's going to be the backup quarterback on Sunday?
See, that's
nothing like some playoff talk and backup quarterbacks.
Well, if you look at it, that's such a hard decision because you're also bringing in and factoring in health. Pickett still not healthy. You can't just heal broken ribs in 2 weeks. They're going to be sore. They're going to hurt. But you also look at McKee on how well he played. So, I mean, that's, to me, that's a coach's decision. I really like McKee. I really think that, 6'6", 230 pounds, those measurables are great. Plus, he has a cannon of an arm. They respect him in the huddle, and he can run the offense.
It's enough for me. He's my number 2.
But, then
Okay,
you got the
Pickett's
experience
healthy.
of Pickett. Yeah, the experience of Pickett. He has experience playing 2 years for the Steelers. So, to me, that's going to be a coach's decision. And I think out of respect, they're going to play Pickett as a second-team guy.
Yeah, today at practice, it did go Jalen Hurts, Kenny Pickett, Tanner McKee when they were throwing the ball. I think it would be unlike them to make that switch. Now, I do think they have an easy out in this game with the ribs. If I'm them, I think it's a no-brainer. I think Tanner McKee's better if they're both healthy, and they're not both healthy. So for me, it would be easy. I do think that it's going to be Kenny Pickett as the backup.
I agree.
For this week, but we all know the offseason chatter. We're going heavy on the Tanner train.
We saw it in camp.
Watch Birds Huddle in March, and guaranteed this will be a topic every single day about who's going to be the backup quarterback.
Yeah. Howie's going to get a bunch of calls from teams saying, hey, we'll give you this for Tanner McKee. And Howie's going to be like, well, what will you give us for Kenny Pickett?
Hey, but how about Kenny? That's how I foresee that working out, that's for sure. All right, Ashley, another question virtually, I hear this time.
Okay, we do have our final virtual question, but first, my guy Jason, he already asked a question earlier. He wanted to ask another one. I was like, I have a bigger job for you, Jason. What are we going to do, Jason?
Eagles!
Attaboy, Jason. Promoted.
There you go.
Way to
Love
go,
it.
Jason.
Okay, now that that's out of the way, Jason, that
Business
was
as usual.
Electric. Okay, so our next question up, if I can find it, started in our conversation here because we got so excited over here that we lost our question. If the defense shuts down Jacobs, does anyone scare you for the Packers receivers?
I think the only answer there is Jaden Reed. He had a big game against them in week 1, but that was before Cooper DeJean was in the starting lineup, and Jaden Reed plays about 78% of his snaps inside as a slot receiver. So that's where he's going to line up, and he's going to line up
78.2356
against Cooper DeJean in this game. And I like Cooper in that matchup. Like I mentioned earlier, without Christian Watson, they don't have that deep threat. A lot of it's going to have to go through Jaden Reed and Tucker Kraft.
And Tucker Kraft averages almost 15 yards a catch, so
yeah,
he is a downfield threat a little bit.
They're good players. They're not players that really scare you.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting, Dave, when we were talking about the challenges with this young Eagles defense, and you look at their first playoffs like a Cooper DeJean, like a Quinyon Mitchell. I think we all have confidence that they're ready for this, but I know you talked to them in the locker room, and you talked to Slay as well, that they're still rookies. Don't forget it.
Yeah, Slay's the only one who still thinks they're rookies because he wants them to get the snacks in the DB room.
Right.
He wants all the rookie duties to continue, but yeah, I don't think the rest of the team really considers these guys rookies anymore. They've played so many snaps in such a high level that, I think that they're kind of beyond that. You have full trust in them. I don't think the playoffs are going to be too big for them either. I think that you can really have faith that they're going to deliver in the postseason.
And they were really prepared. They were really prepared going into this season, more so than I was. I can remember I started every game, in the preseason and played every snap in the preseason. And once I got to week 13, I hit that rookie wall. They probably smashed the rookie wall. They jumped over the rookie wall. They're not playing like they had the rookie wall at all. So, I don't know what they did to prepare themselves for this season, a longer season than I played in, but they are showing no signs of them being, deterred from being great players in the secondary.
Barrett's too humble to mention he wouldn't have been starting if the starter hadn't been suspended for life.
I probably went to guard, but since he got suspended, Bernard Williams got suspended, couldn't stop smoking, so
happens, I suppose.
I took it. I took it and ran with it.
All right, we're getting ready to wrap up our Eagles Playoff Live Q&A, but first I'm going to put my fellows on the spot because it's what I do best. Barrett, give me a score prediction for Sunday.
That's tough.
It is Wednesday.
It's going to be cold out there, and both teams, they can score points. I'm going 28-23. Birds win.
Wow. All right. What do you think, Rube?
Yeah, I think the Eagles are going to win this game by a touchdown plus. I'll say 30-22.
Okay.
Eagles 30-22.
I like that. I think it's going to be a little lower scoring than that. I'll go 24-17.
Wow. I think it's the lowest scoring. I think 21-10. I think that the Eagles defense is going to stop Josh Jacobs, and I think once you do that, frankly don't think this is going to be much of a game. But maybe I'm just overly optimistic.
You should be. It's a good team.
We will see what happens. Well, thank you all so much for coming to this Eagles Playoff Live Q&A presented by Toyota, official automotive partner of the NFL. Thank
Let's
you
go,
for
baby.
being here. Can't wait for Sunday. We'll see you at the link, 4:30 against the Green Bay Packers. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks for coming out.